それでは時間になりましたので、ただいまより京都大学および S&R 財団共催ウェブセミナー、新型コロナウイルスの現況から見る京都大学の展望を開始させていただきます。本ウェブセミナーには世界中から1000人を超える皆様にご参加いただいております。本日はご参加を賜りまして誠にありがとうございます。現在、新型コロナウイルスが世界中で猛威を振るっており、皆様も様々な形で影響を受けておられる中ではないかと思います。心よりお見舞い申し上げます。はじめに何点か注意事項をご案内申し上げます。本セミナーは2部構成となり、まず40分程度ご講演者お二人による対談、その後20分程度質疑応答の時間を設けております。参加者の皆様の音声はミュートの設定にさせていただいておりますが、ご質問をされたい場合は、チャット機能からご質問いただくことができます。ご対談中、また Q&A の時間中受け付けておりますので、多数のご質問をお待ちしております。本セミナーは現在、京都大学および S&R 財団の Facebook からライブストリームされており、また後日ウェブサイト上での公開が予定されますことをご了解ください。また本セミナーの聴講にあたり、英語の同時通訳をご利用いただけます。英語でのご聴講をご希望の方は、音声につき、電話からではなく、コンピューターからの参加を選択いただいた上で、画面上の通訳ボタンを押していただき、メイン音声をミュートにするをご選択ください。次に、2名のご講演者の紹介をさせていただきます。次のスライドをお願いします。まず、京都大学総長、山際十一先生です。山際総長は、京都大学理学部ご卒業、理学博士でいらっしゃい、2014年より京都大学総長を務めておられます。屋久島で野生ニホンザル、またアフリカ各地で野生ゴリラの社会生態学的研究をされています。次に、京都大学理事、S&R 財団理事長兼 CEO、久野幸子先生です。久野先生は京都大学工学部ご卒業、工学博士でいらっしゃい、これまで緑内障治療薬、レスキュラ点眼薬および便秘症等の治療薬アミティーザの研究開発、商品化に成功されました。現在、社会起業家としても幅広く活動されています。山際総長は京都から、久能先生はアメリカ合衆国ワシントン DC からご参加いただいております。私は本日モデレーターを務めさせていただきます京都大学卒業生弁護士の佐藤由紀と申します。私もワシントン DC から本日参加させていただいております。それでは山際先生、久能先生によるご対談を開始させていただきます。まず、COVID-19 が引き続き世界中に影響を及ぼしていますが、今回のパンデミックで人間と自然界との関わり方も変わってきそうです。また、多くの人がソーシャルディスタンシングを強いられ、何ヶ月も対面でのコミュニケーションができない。
social distances and had not been able to communicate face to face for many months, which means that we may have to revisit our concepts about human relationships and communication. What are the impacts of COVID-19 on society? Dr. Yamagiwa. Hello to you. Now, COVID-19 is given an unprecedented impact on human society, because in the past, when human beings created society, we have been given three types of freedoms, and now we cannot exert the freedom as we want. What are the three freedoms? The freedom to gather together, freedom to move, freedom to talk to each other, conversation. Now, I have been studying gorillas and monkeys, and that makes me feel that people are indeed free because we can gather at any time. But in order for us to gather together, we need to move around. Now, in the global society, beyond crossing borders, people can move freely and go anywhere we want. And that has made our society indeed very rich. Now we move around, we get together, and what do? We talk to each other. We have freedom to converse. Now, two of those freedoms are now prohibited. We could be the victims of at risk of having been infected, but we could also be the cause of infection. We could give infection. So we are the victims and perpetrator at the same time. The victims, once the victims are of the diseases identified, or rather, in the past, victims of any events, we were able to identify them and help them. But now it is a global situation. The COVID-19 is spread around the world, which means when we gather together, there's always a risk of infection. When we move around, there's always a risk of infection. And the only freedom given that we still have is to talk to each other. That is why, as Ms. Sako said, we gather together. We do keep the social distance, but still we are able to talk. However, for all the time, we have had freedom to move around, gather together, and talk, and those freedom is now at the fundamental risk of collapse. Now, with science and technology, we are creating new relationship among people as we move forward into the future to create new form, and this is where we are. We are now about to move into the new era. Thank you very much. Next. Dr. Kuno, because of this pandemic, there are many efforts to develop new therapeutics and vaccines using the knowledge of people and computer analysis around the world, but we know that it's going to take months and years. It's very difficult and time-consuming. The probability of success for drug discovery is said to be only 1 in 30,000. However, you, Dr. Kuno, you have succeeded in developing 2 innovative medicine. What are the secrets of your success? And we heard that you're involved in the development of COVID-19 vaccine.
佐子さん、ありがとうございます。ワシントン DC の久能です。今日は皆さんに参加していただいて、大変世界中の方たちと対話することができるという機会をいただきまして、大変ありがとうございます。成功する秘訣というのは実は一言で言うのはかなり難しくて、そういう秘訣はもしかしたらないかもしれないんですけれども、振り返って考えてみますに、山際先生が先ほどおっしゃったことの中の、多分考える自由というのがですね、非常に重要だったのではないかなというふうに思います。でもこれは本当に40年近く前なんですけれども、35年ぐらい前なんですけれども、私の共同創業者の上野隆二博士が見つけた発見がありまして、それを私たち大発見だなというふうに思いまして、そこから証明していくという、これ私どものビジネス自体はサイエンスベースドビジネスと言いますので、基本的には飛ぶように考え、這うように証明するビジネスというふうに言っております。ですからその飛ぶように考えるというところが非常に大事で、今までに全くなかったような考え方ですとか、unprecedented
new discoveries, new ways of thinking are at the beginning, and then we go to demonstrate evidence to verify. We were young and we had time and environment.
発明者でもあり共同創業者の上野隆二先生なんですけど、実はその上野さんと会ったのは京都大学の林修先生という先生のラボなんですね。この先生は実は2年前にノーベル賞を受賞された本庄 先生の先生になります。ですからその頃の京都大学のエトス、今もそうではないかと思うんですけれども、いわゆるですね、誰もやっていないことをやろうと。で、今まで誰も考えていないことを考えようというのが、私たちが与えられたテーマだったように思います。ですから、実験してみて0から1ということでもありますし、実験してみて10% 良くなりました、20% 良くなりましたというのではなくて、桁が1桁とか2桁上がるようなことを考えようというエトスがあったように思います。ですからそういう意味では、もしかしたら京都大学のこのエコシステムですとか、エトスというものが成功の秘訣だったのではないかなというふうに思っているところです。で、私たち非常に幸運でサイエンティストを目指してたんですけれども、2回日本とアメリカで新薬を作ることができたということは非常に幸運だったんですけども、今、ちょっと応援しているのは、赤田渉先生といいまして、アメリカの NIH の研究者だった方が創業されて、DLP セラピューティクスという会社を7年前に作られています。この会社は70億人の人を対象にした、健康を守るワクチンを作るという、プラットフォームテクノロジーで次世代型ワクチンと言われてるんですけども、それを私を応援してるんですが、そのテクノロジーを使えばマラリアですとかデング熱ですとかがんですとかそういうものを比較的安い値段でたくさんの人にアクセスしてもらえるんじゃないかということでやっています。コロナウイルスに関しましても、実はこのテクノロジーが使えるということが分かりまして、急遽自己増殖型 RNA ワクチンという、いわゆる次世代型の RNA ワクチンを開発中で、来年早々に臨床試験に入って、
starting the clinical trial early next
来年
year
の終わりぐらいには供給開始できるような
start
タイムライン
supplying
かというふうに
the
聞いていま
product
す。
by the end of the year. And that's the timeline I have been informed of. Thank you. Dr. Akahata is also associated with Kyoto University. Yes, he's from the Virus Institute, so he is an alum as well.
のやっているお話にはたくさん出てくるん
So
ですけ
I
ど
have
も、
been involved with a number of Kyoto University alums myself. Thank you. Now, President Yamagiwa, gorilla is one of the apes, and you are trying to understand the human behavior and human society through the study of gorillas. Now, how have you been focused on this topic and trans-border travel by humans as encapsulated in the process of globalization is probably confounding the situation when it comes to COVID-19. So from the viewpoint of gorilla studies, how do you understand the relations between the nature and humans? As Dr. Kuno have rightly pointed out, intelligence of Kyoto University was predicated on the pursuit of knowledge that has never been thought of by anyone else. So that is the drive to find something that no one has seen before, starting from very scratch. And also in an everyday life, through ordinary dialogue, researchers are trying to find something new. And that is another kind of discovery often exercised by mathematicians, if you will. I belong to the first school of thoughts when it comes to discovery. And that is the reason I went to Africa to study gorilla. Ape study was the area of study that had been first launched in Kyoto University, but Dr. Imanishi, who was my mentor, taught us that apes do have their communities and social society. Back in 1950, it was believed that the language was a prerequisite for a pack of animals to have a society, and that has been the long-held view. However, my teacher said that society and culture can develop among animals that does not have languages, and that was the reason that I went to Africa, to have a first-hand look at it. And I followed the footprints of Dr. Imanishi to study the society among gorillas, and that is how I have become involved in the studies of gorillas and apes. And in line with the COVID-19 discussion, virus existed before the emergence of human beings. The same is true about microbes and viruses. And they needed hosts to populate, and that is the reason that they went into the cells of animals and they propagated in clusters, and they usually do not do any harm to the host. And back in those times, those microbes and germs populated in their host without doing much harm. But we are not yet sure about the origin of COVID-19, but it is strongly believed that it started in the bats, which were being sold in a market in Wuhan. But through the propagation of the virus, they also changed their nature, and the virus and the host usually have a more convivial relationship when they coexist for a longer period of time. And that kind of viruses are existent in tropical forests. But people went into the forest, and that is why people started getting infected with unknown viruses. And the same was true for AIDS, which started from bats, which were first infected by apes, which were then infected by humans. So these kind of zoologic diseases, but there is a range of different viruses, as can be testified by Dr. Kuno. COVID-19 is quite infectious, but it is not as fatal. Only 20% of those infected die. But Ebola has a higher percentage of fatality, with the equivalent infectivity. It has a fatality of 80% or so. When it comes to AIDS, people infected with AIDS can survive for decades. But Ebola vaccines is now ready, but we still do not have vaccination for AIDS, even though it is a long existent disease that was first discovered 40 years ago. So through a range of different processes and with coexistence, they mutated. However, because human disturbs the nature and ecosystem, then they became exposed to those unknown viruses. I don't know where they came from. They could have arrived from outer space, but this trend of globalization is benefiting the spread of the viruses. Dr. Kuno's lab is also working on the vaccination, but I'm afraid that it's going to take some time. And that is something that we have to honestly embrace. We cannot eradicate viruses. We have to somehow find a way to coexist with them. In tropical forest, there used to be a sense of order that has facilitated the coexistence between the virus and the animals. But humans have sort of disturbed the balance, the delicate balance that has been maintained. Now, talking of Kyoto University, what kind of impact has been exerted on Kyoto University by COVID-19? Is there anything that we can possibly do? Next slide, please. We are currently in a situation where lectures can be given only online. I think that the same is true for the lectures given by Dr. Kuno. But in a medical field, for example, hands-on studies and experiments are indispensable for the improvement of existing technologies and skills. And the same is true for biology. Field work cannot be done online. People have to get together and share the experiences for researchers to make an advance. But if we get together, that can possibly facilitate a emergence of a cluster, which it actually did emerge on Kyoto University campus. So we are currently working hard to maintain the flow of lectures, but students currently do not have part-time jobs, so they're short on cash. So that is the reason we have established an emergency grant fellowship for students. We currently have 2,700 international students as well, and they're not well off. Many of them have part-time jobs, or they do TA-ship or RA-ship for their livelihood. And their motivation for study needs to be supported. And that is the reason we have to keep providing support for these students. We are planning to provide a support of 1 billion yen, and we are now doing a crowdfunding, a grant type fellowship of 120,000 yen a year per head, needing 1 billion yen. Also, government has provided us with some funds, but that is not sufficient. That is why we are topping off the amount for graduate students.
The students who are not used to ICT environments, people do not have devices. So the equipments needed for work at home, schooling at home will be offered free of charge, lent free of charge right now. So that's one system that we have. Thank you very much. Next. I have a question to both Dr. Yamagiwa and Dr. Kuno. Many students at Kyoto University have been affected by the COVID situation. In 2020, they must have had a lot of plans to study, to investigate, to go overseas and other activities. But because of COVID-19, their job recruitment activities, as well as those other plans, may have to be changed, and many students must be feeling anxiety about future. Now, the alumni as well, we need to deal with Corona, the COVID-19 situation, both personally and professionally. So we really have to revisit our thoughts about the way we live, the way we relate with other people. Now, COVID-19, on the other hand, have changed the values or the social system very largely. We may never go back to the time before COVID-19. Right now, it's very difficult to predict the future, to think of what would happen in the future. The whole society is changing. Now, what can we, alumni and students and global citizens broadly should do? How should we live? Now, the suggestions from Kyoto University or prospects of Kyoto University is what we like to hear. First, Dr. Yamagiwa. Well, this risk of COVID-19 need to be changed and converted into opportunities so that we can transform the society all at once. Online education, there are many negative aspects, that's true. However, there are many positive aspects as well, because the students can stay at home and have education one-on-one basis with faculty members, and they can wear anything they want, they can look any way they want. And this would really give a two-way communication rather than being in huge classrooms. And the teachers receive many questions. Now they have to answer each of them. Now, job recruitment, seeking for a job has become difficult. But without visiting the companies on online basis, you can interact with the company people through the PC. That saves your time and effort. Now, 500 people, 1,000 people can now discuss on online basis through the PC or the web meetings. You can participate in meetings anywhere, wherever you are. That saves you a lot of time and the cost of having to move around. So you don't have to spend those costs. You can talk to each other. And this is a wonderful opportunity. It really promotes communication. What we need to be careful about is in online experiences, it's very difficult to create the relationships based on trust or discuss very difficult, subtle issues, complicated issues. As I said earlier, in true education, you don't just read textbook on your own, but the opportunity of education is that you talk to your colleagues and you talk to your teachers. This is a joint effort of developing your thoughts and processes through interaction. Therefore, we need to find good ways to combine both opportunities as we try to find ways to work together jointly. Another point is the concept of labor may have changed, because now, aside from university environment, in the past you graduated from the colleges, you are employed by a company, and every day you commuted to the workplace and engage in the tasks given by the company. That used to be labor in general, but now people are finding out that you can do a lot of this online. So, which means you don't just have to go back and forth between your home and the company offices. Rather, you can stay at home and do both. Or you could have multiple homes, multiple opportunities to work at home. You don't have to move around to do different tasks, which means the way people think about labor will change in the future. Now, college students, once they are employed by a company within 1 year in Japan, 30% of these people change jobs. It's very different from what we had in the past. Many people now may get employed, but if they think that is not satisfactory, they move around, which means now freely people select their workplace. It is no longer fixed as it used to be in the past. The society is changing and opportunities to learn will change too. It is no longer only at university, but even after you graduate, you can continue to receive education through your life, which means the mission of university will drastically change in the future. Once you are out of school, you will have opportunities to receive education, and the industry, the companies, and academia will collaborate with each other to offer such opportunities. The students will be able to go back and forth between the university and the company. Thank you very much. The role of university will become more important in the future. It will be the hub or the core to link all the different parts in the society. I fully agree. Now, what I thought about COVID-19 and its impact is the changes in the values that we have had during the past 30 years. The economical success was considered to be most important. But what young American people say today is that what is important is not just economical impact, but how people live, what the contribution people make to the society, what are the social impact, what are the global impact, and such as in rainforest, but curiosity impact is another thing. People want to be curious. People want to do what excites them. Those are the 4 values that can be made very cleverly as we deal with all the problems of COVID-19. Profitability alone will not give you a solution. Specifically, I would say that vaccines, well, we started to work on vaccines 7 years ago, and most of pharmaceutical companies were not interested in this because it was not profitable. However, there are other social impacts, global impacts, and curiosity impacts that could be generated by the development, and that alone would give this such activities value. Now, the choices or the decisions by individuals will become very important. In English, we use the term trust. What do you trust? What information do you trust or believe? In the end, you have to trust yourself. However, through conversation with people you trust, further trust will be created. Another is the grit or the courage. It's not just courageous, but the grit that you are prepared to face with difficulty. For all the entrepreneurs and startup businesses, you need to have the grit. And the grit is strongest when you make your own decisions. It's not that you're forced by someone to make decisions, but you make decisions on yourself, or you decide not to do certain things. And this is when you are the strongest in dealing with something new. Another thing is being humble. You have to be humble in terms of nature, or you have to be humble in terms of human relationships. It's not win or lose situation. Anybody can be successful. Unnecessary competition needs to be prevented, is what we say here. Unnecessary competition is no longer necessary. It's not whether you win or lose. If somebody wins, you celebrate the success. And if somebody fails, try to help and support the person up. That's how the values will change in the future.
In a digital world or ICT-based society is based on network, and those people within a network, as Dr. Kuno mentioned, the trustworthiness of people around you is important, and people around you may be in flux. And that also can lead to a sense of insecurity when you don't know what to trust. Now, what do you have to do? In the past, people did not move around. That is why they try to demonstrate one's value by possessing material things. But now that we will be moving about more, even though we have our ability to move is now restricted by COVID-19, we now have a drive for move. And in moving leads to meeting. You meet new people and you post it on your Facebook or other social network to let the people around you know what you have been doing. So experience will define a person's value. And that is the new period we will be heading into. And sharing the experience and the comments or common goods are the important building blocks of the new society. And we have to build a network of people who can approve one's existence. And I think that is where you can, and university is exactly the place where you can build such a community, because it is not a profit-oriented organization. You can rely on your creativity without fearing a blunder. And this is a place of experiment, university is. People with different backgrounds and different thought process can meet on a campus, and that is where you can build your own community. So you can really capitalize on this value of a university campus, and that is one important role university can play. And university has a very important role to play. And one point to add by myself, I may be a bit more pessimistic than Dr. Yamagiwa is. Well, within my lifespan, I may not be able to move about as much as I might want to. I may be stuck in Washington, D.C. going forward. And this is an experience that I have never had before. But even if that is the new reality, within this community of 150 people, or 200 or 300 people, this can be the size of community I can trust, probably. But how can we connect different networks standing up to a global issue such as this pandemic or climatic change or other sorts of global issues? And suppose that there were communities that were stranded in a location. How can we connect these communities? Say, for example, an alumni network can be a strong facilitator of networking. But I have a question to Dr. Yamagiwa, actually. Suppose that you get stranded in a location. How do you pursue global value or global ethics, if you will? How can we share those values without physically moving around? Well, up until lately, think global and act local was the slogan that I like. But we now have to think local and act global going forward. The new coronavirus has forced us to look around us, our immediate community, the bare necessities to protect our lives. We have to work together with people in your neighborhood to protect your life. And that needs to be locally focused. And I think that this is a good opportunity to review our lifelines and to prioritize things that you need. For example, those with young children have to take care of them, or you may have to take care of elderly people. And this may not necessarily be economically impactful, but these are the things that you must do to protect your life. And avatars are now being developed to be your proxy for them to travel on your behalf. And you have to deliver the message or action via the encounter among avatars or proxies. And that makes me think that empathy is something that is going to be very important going forward. You have to first locally embrace the reality to stand up against the challenge to drive the empathy that we need. North-South issues or developed or developing countries issues were deriving from the fact that those stronger were forcing a solution to a weaker one. And that was one of the reasons we have come to see a number of issues. But we do have local cultures. Culture is a very important word that is not included in the 17 goals of SDGs. That is, well-being is included, but culture is not included, sadly. But culture, embodied culture is something that we have to preserve, not only preserve, but also to facilitate newer version of such cultures to facilitate the diversity across the world. Well, diversity will become increasingly important going forward. And that sociality or empathy or imagination or creativity or personality. These are important values, but you have to embrace those, but you also have to realize that you are an important component of a global whole. So why do we have to mutually help among humans? Maybe this is a sense of logic that cannot be built for artificial intelligence or robotics or androids. Time and space needs to be shared. And I still can share time and space even though I am joining you from Washington today. But the university and society have to support such desire for people to join. And also diversity. Talking of diversity, we knew that the pandemic is coming. We just didn't know when it is to appear. And gray rhino or gray rhinoceros. Well, black swan comes out of the blue, but gray rhinos are visible, but it's way far and you really don't know when it is coming. And there are many other things than the new coronavirus that you know exist, but don't know when it is approaching you. So you cannot really score a full score facing up a new challenge, but the more diverse a society is, the more resilient a society can be in a crisis situation. And Kyoto University needs to be different from other universities because that is one factor of diversity and sustainability and survivability can benefit from such a diversity. Kyoto University is in Kyoto, which is not a small thing. COVID-19, you see, historians or philosophers started talking about future who were not interested in the future in the past because they were more engaged in the past. But for engineers, past is something that engineers do not get excited about because we are more developmental when it comes to engineering.
The future should always be better for engineers. However, that is not true for philosophy. In philosophy and history, the viruses and bacteria causing infectious diseases, which would change the society. How has it changed the society? By having that knowledge, you'll be able to expect what would happen in the future. And diversity, what Dr. Kuno mentioned, spatially and temporally, Kyoto had always been very diverse in what it can offer, and we have accumulated knowledge that can be used to develop the culture in Kyoto. I'm not a Kyoto supporter, but Kyoto is inclusive. It has accepted all different events that had happened in the past. That is true. Now, that has given us a lot of force in Kyoto, a lot of power in Kyoto. Well, now thinking about the next step, I think we need to share what Kyoto has to the global community. Once we can do it, that will be wonderful. Well, this is the 150 years anniversary of the birth of Tetsuro Nishida philosophy, and the supporters have given us a lot of knowledge, and I'm going to do something to communicate this the thoughts originated from Kyoto that is very unique to Japan. I would like to share this with the global community. Thank you very much. Now I'm giving you the microphone back, Ms. Sako. Thank you very much. Now we have another 15 minutes left, and we'd like to move on to Q&A. Thank you very much for sending us many questions. I would like to group some of the questions. Now, the first question is about digital technology. We have received several questions on this. earlier we said that once we can move around, that will determine the value for people. Now, getting together to move around can the lack of freedom be overcome with technology? Now, another question. I'm part of the communications, the ICT. Now, Dr. Yamagiwa said that there are weaknesses of online activities, and are there any particular technologies that needs to be developed in order to overcome the shortages and problems we have with the online activities? Dr. Yamagiwa? Well, in the past, moving around, gathering together meant a lot of unnecessary activities. Now we can offset that by online method. Now IC technologies, once they are developed further, we may have better experiences of drinking together online or esports, the sports activities online that may be made possible. Earlier, I talked about avatars, and avatar technology is very much advanced today. Without actually going there out in the field, you have your avatar robot to do what you want it to do. It doesn't mean you don't have to go there at all. For example, in Kyoto University, we have what is called a reverse education. You send a textbook to people, and on the online, you send people out the schools on video, but several times in one term, the faculty members will have to visit different places and receive questions face to face. By having such by giving such an opportunity, the foreign students do not necessarily have to come to Kyoto, but still they'll be able to experience the teachings of Kyoto University. Schools around the world have started such activities. You do not necessarily have to move around and get together and take actions. Without that, a lot of what we used to do may be done through technology in the future, and it's important that we develop such technologies. Thank you very much. Now, I am involved in some of those efforts. Social entrepreneurs, how should we inspire them, encourage them, and let them move forward? We have given the incubator opportunity. Sharing time and place in an unusual place is what we do. Furthermore, the time is not it shouldn't be too long, and hybrid type of ideas will be important for us as well as for universities. And on the online basis, we can share time and space. We need to have both of those opportunities. However, we now live in the era of huge volume of information. Therefore, it may be good for you to be alone sometime and forget about everything else, because all the data-driven efforts means that you are driven by the data from the past, but people have imagination, inspiration, or intuition to think of the future. And that may be more important in some aspects. So students and researchers, the scholars, and people like ourselves, it may be important that you try to stay away from everything else and be alone and recognize that you could still live on your own. Such opportunities will be important after COVID-19 crisis. You're right. Environments in the machines are all predictions from the past, and you can maneuver what is in front of you. But nature is not that. Unexpected events occur in nature, and that's nature. And people's body and mind have been created so that we can deal with unexpected circumstances. Otherwise, you cannot activate your mind and body. You need to encounter such unexpected situations, right? Whether it's good or bad, those unexpected events have made people stronger. It led to our evolution, and towards the future, we will be able to think positively forward. And I think those strengths have been given to us. That's what I like to believe. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next topic of questions. Now, developments from Japan. Pharmaceutical companies develop new products, but oftentimes they receive approval overseas and then bring them back into Japan, but this will hinder Japan from making new developments. Don't you think is the question? Another question. In the future, the virus may be there all the time. Now, alumni from Kyoto University, maybe in the society and in industry, what should they consider important, and how should they behave? Now, first about pharmaceutical development. Now, our first pharmaceutical development business was in Japan in 1987 to 1994. We are developing our first product. And the second product, well, Japan entered into the period of recession. Things did not work. So I moved to the United States and developed the second product in the States. The old models in the United States, the market in the United States was huge, profitability levels were very high. That is why I moved to the States. But that's the old model and no longer true. Developing a product in Japan first and then launch and supply such products globally, including the States and other parts of the world, it is now possible. Especially in development of vaccine, Japan has its strength. And so Japan first products could be developed, or like VLPs. It may have been developed in the United States, but studied in Japan. We have had such experiences. In other words, our situation in Japan is not as bad as you may think. Well, I'm not a medical expert, but I've been dealing with Japanese government, and I have thought that in Japan, safety is considered most important above anything else. If you make one mistake, that's the end of it. The clinical trials, it takes a very long time, but that's because they are very cautious. Now, in dealing with COVID-19, they're going back and forth, but that is because they have to move very cautiously. In a sense, we can say that is the good aspect of democracy, but the negative part of it is that it takes too much time. It is good and bad. In Japan. For Japan to launch new products globally, you need to make the best use of what you have not shared with the international society before. And culture is one thing. During Edo period, we are closed, but in Meiji and Taisho era, we used our Japanese culture, Edo culture, very nicely.
Overshadowed by the COVID-19, countries are closing their borders. And we shouldn't be sitting there idle. Rather, we have to rethink what we can do. We have to do some soul searching. And we can do new things from Japan. Yes, indeed, we can do new things as well. And we have to remind ourselves that there isn't such a model to catch up with from behind. You have to be courageous to try new things. There isn't a role model in the United States either. There isn't a textbook for success, and that is why everyone is in the process of trial and error. So we are on the level playing field, so we have to be courageous. Thank you very much. We have two more questions, possibly. Well, there are several questions about the measures against COVID-19. There are advantages and disadvantages of online interaction in your professional and private lives. And there are issues in online communication as well. But going forward, how should we embrace the value system going forward? And on the part of Kyoto University, international opportunities may be on the decline due to the COVID-19. And does Kyoto University have any plans to facilitate international exchanges with other universities online? And COVID-19 will dramatically transform conventional industries and businesses, possibly creating new business opportunities. What roles do you think a university can play in facilitating wild ideas? So these are the questions related to COVID-19 or measures against COVID-19, if you will. Starting off, Professor Yamagiwa. You have to know the culture. To know the culture, you have to internalize the culture, meaning that you have to go to the place to understand the culture. Going to a festival, for one thing. Well, I went to Africa for 1 full year to experience everything from wedding to funeral. So be there to understand the culture. However, with the developed communication technologies, we can now experience foreign culture in many different forms. For example, Kyoto University alumni have developed an app in a book to experience a local festival visually. And book was something to be read. However, the sound of music or the voices of people can also be experienced with this app. Anecdotes can also be listened to as the reader reads a book. So that was an app developed by a graduate of Kyoto University. And researchers are visiting Kyoto University from around the world. So this is an epitome of a global community on Kyoto University. And that can be a strong platform. Now that we cannot go to a field work, Japanese university on students on campus can work with international students, and we can exchange those labor remotely so that we can do a new forms of remote field work. And that has been a new format that have been launched by some universities already. And looking for opportunities, one should try to go to the location yourself at one point. But even within Japan, there are places where you can have transcultural experience. And that experience can be gained exactly on campus. So a university can be playing a bridging function. And we have to try to find a way to do the field work remotely by exchanging labor. Thank you for many good questions. In academia, well, from April this year, I started serving in this academia, and then I have met a range of people, AI scientists to philosophers, and I have had an online meeting with them. And then we together explored new directions with them. And through these experiences, I am realizing the important value a university can play. Invention and innovation are two different things, and I would like to bring your attention to this. Invention is to do something that have never been done by someone else. It can be an invention of an idea, philosophical or cultural ideas, or engineering ideas, or be it in medical science. For you to invent something, you shouldn't be too selective. And this is an area you can do with a good brain and reasonable amount of money. So important is to create a safe place, like an academia, where you can meet people with interesting ideas. But proof of concept, POCs, the verification of an hypothesis on a smaller scale to lead you to the next step. But proof of concept can be achieved with your strong passion and a reasonable amount of budget. So you should be flexible and generous, trying new things, leading to certain outcomes, and that can then re-demonstrate the value of Kyoto University or academia in general into the 21st century. Thank you very much. We have received a number of questions, but unfortunately we are running out of time. It is now 10 a.m. Japan time, so the next question is going to be the last question of today's session. You will be retiring from your presidency in September, and you now have your successor. From your experience in Kyoto University, what are you going to do going forward from October? And Dr. Kuno, any new plans for Kyoto Universities going forward, starting off with Professor Yamagiwa? The new president had been elected, Nagahiro Minato, who has been a provost of Kyoto University, and he's also a medical scientist as well. And I'm sure that he will be a valuable person. And he has been a key person in my administration as well. So I'm very confident that he will be a wonderful president. And from April 2021, I will be serving as the president of a research institute of global environment. And this institute is also a research institute that looks into the cultures of human beings. And I mentioned that culture is not included in SDGs, but I personally think that that is an element that is going to be even more important than it already is. And I will recharge myself for the first 6 months to come back as a researcher in that institute in April 2021. Thank you very much for your presidency for the last 6 years, and it's been a wonderful management. And you have communicated the Kyoto University unique messages, and I look forward to meeting you again, and you're going to stay in Kyoto as well. Well, in or out of Kyoto University, I will be working on the Kyoto model, a Kyoto University model that I was talking about. And I will be a strong supporter of this Kyodai model. And I'll also reach out to alumni across the globe, those who studied or did some R&Ds at Kyoto University. And I will help build a network of those who graduated or who spent time on Kyoto University campus so that we can find and start rolling out new initiatives.
Thank you very much. I'll be looking forward to the opportunity. Last but not least, in this COVID-19 situation, there are medical professionals and essential workers who are working hard around the globe, and I'd like to extend my deepest appreciation to all of them. They are very active. They have been very active and supportive even today. I thank them very much. And also at Kyoto University, because of the COVID situation, various support programs have been initiated for which people around the world have donated to help the students, as well as for the improvement of the university hospital equipment and facilities. And I'd like to ask for your continued support. Thank you very much. We thank you very much. And I thank you very much. This is the end of the Q&A session. Dr. Yamagiwa, Dr. Kuno, thank you very much for the very precious information that you have shared with us. Thank you. As I have some announcement from Kyoto University. If you still have time, it take another 2-3 minutes. Be with us. Now, Kyoto University students, some of them are having a very difficult time because of COVID situation. There are support programs from Japan, from abroad. You can apply for this donation support. Next, at Kyoto University, we have crowdfunding programs for Kyoto University Hospital. Kyoto University hospitals have been accepting very severely ill patients from the infection. Now, there need to be some construction work to accept them. 30 million yen was has already been achieved, but the ultimate goal of 50 million yen is still not achieved. And once this is achieved, we will be able to have negative pressure rooms for ICUs and other treatments. Lastly, we have alumni organization, alumni and the foreign students. We have multiple organizations around Japan and overseas, North America as well. We have a program in New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco. There are 3 alumni associations just in the United States. You can find the information from Kyoto University website. Please take a look at them. And lastly, after this seminar, we are conducting some questionnaire survey. The outcome of the survey will be used in our planning for the future programs and activities, and I ask you to fill them out. That's all. And those of you who have participated in the web seminar today, you will receive all the information from Kyoto University and the result of the questionnaire survey via mails. And please give us your cooperation. Now, the Kyoto University and SNR Foundation web seminar, the coronavirus perspective from the Kyoto University community web seminar is come to the end. Thank you very much for your participation and collaboration. Thank you very much, and thank you.
The name of the research institute was the Research Institute for Human and Nature, which Professor Yamagiwa will start working from April 2021.